Women's Month, the Benicia Black Lives Matter group has been highlighting some experiences and voices of Black women, and has chosen to frame our conversations around the topic of patriarchy and racism. So as I talk with you, Tina, and I'll have you introduce yourself in a minute, we'll discuss how these important issues have impacted you in your life, in your career, and as a businesswoman. So I'm Janie Branicar-Lewis, and I'm a member of BLM.
And I am LaTina Chichester. Everyone calls me Tina.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for sitting with us today. So I think just to get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, your career in early education as an owner of Tender Hearts Preschool, and other work that you've done in addition to education.
So Tender Hearts Preschool has been in existence since 2002. So this is our 19th year. So we're honored and excited to be here today, especially with COVID and everything that's been happening. And prior to the preschool, I was a police officer in Berkeley.
All right.
So I did that. That's where I met my husband. I had an injury, and then I said, what will life look like after law enforcement?
Yeah.
And so that's when Tender Hearts was created.
Okay, that's great. So you mentioned what you did before in your before life and now this life. What led to you being an owner of a business here, the Tender Hearts Preschool? I mean, that's a big step.
Yes. So I went to UC Berkeley.
Okay.
I had several jobs, and I think the job that I loved most, in addition to working in law enforcement, that's how I became an officer, was I worked on campus at their preschool.
Yeah.
And it was exciting, you know, just to see the children grow, just to be a part of shaping and molding children. And I thought, you know what, that's how I want to make my mark on life.
Okay.
And so that's how we started Tender Hearts.
And it sounds like an opportunity came up with this particular business, and you just decided to jump in, huh?
Right. So I do a lot of things on faith. I'm a talker. So I was talking with one of our officers and telling him, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And so I mentioned childcare, and he actually saw the listing in the newspaper and said, Tina, this is you. This is your calling. You know, you do everything based on faith. And so I called. I had no idea what to do, how to do it. But I stepped out on faith, and they said, oh, we like you. You can, you know, rent the building. And then I thought, now what?
Yeah.
What's next? And so that's how everything started.
Okay, so that sounds like a good path that you got you here, and you're passionate about it for sure. So when you became a business owner, what were some of the challenges and the barriers, if there were, in launching a business?
So I think the challenges were, I was new. I had no idea what to do and how to do it. So I was really relying on other people to help me out and guide me. And so I did reach out to as we were speaking earlier, the owner who had been here prior to me. And she was very helpful, and I found my director, who's still with us, Shirley Lemon, and she helped me along the way. But it was challenging because you didn't see anyone that looked like me, right?
Exactly.
And so you're trying to figure it out along the way, and then having people trust you with their children.
Absolutely.
So we just worked on building a brand where we would stand on our brand.
And talk a little bit about that brand. What kind of philosophy did you come into working with families and children that guided you in how you wanted to do this work?
So I believe that when I was a police officer, I was always that one that said, oh, having a police experience shouldn't be a bad experience, right? Most of the time we know that we're driving fast, we know that we're running stop signs, and so I would always try to make it a positive one. And so what you would find a lot of times is that people just needed a break, right? Or that they didn't have the guidance that I was asking and when I was starting this business. And so when we started this business, and I say we because it took a team.
Right, I'm sure.
I mean, most of our teachers have been with us for the 19 years, 17 years, 10 years.
And that's a pretty remarkable thing in itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I wanted to do was to create a family. And so I said, we will be a family environment. where we are teaching the parents, we're teaching the children, and they're teaching us. How do we all collectively in the same space do the best that we can do in order to elevate everyone, right? Because I feel that if you have that foundation, you will always go back to it.
Yeah.
And so that was our goal. And so we work on the whole child, not just academics, the yes, please, thank you. If a child falls here, you'll have 2 or 3 kids come over. Are you okay? What can we do for you? And then really treating them as little individuals, in society. And so that has been our philosophy. It has worked. We still have children that are in high school that have graduated that still come by.
They're going to remember you always.
Yeah, and I don't remember anyone from my preschool, right? And so they still remember us. They still come by. I run into parents, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, here's Susie." And
that says a lot about what you got here then.
Right. And so a lot of them said that they were going to stop by today, and that is what my goal was, to just be more than an educational place, but a place where people could say, "Hey, we are a part of developing who they became."
All right. So you mentioned earlier that someone who looks like you, a person of color, coming into a business like this or into a community like this, there weren't a lot of models maybe out there. So what would you say were some of those challenges, and what did you do, or did you have a mentor along with maybe the previous owner, but a mentor who could guide you through that navigation that you had to do?
Well, I want to say when we first opened in 2002, there were 2 that I knew of, Black business owners here in Benicia.
Okay.
And they were both on First Street. And Rosalind was one of them. And so I did a lot of talking with Rosalind, just having her give me that motivation. Because that's all you need, is you need someone to give you that push, to say that you deserve it, you can do it. And then maybe you can talk with this person or that person or this agency or that agency, because again, it's a collective thing. It's not something that you just do on your own.
And in doing that, then, I mean, as a business owner, I've never been a business owner, but I can only imagine that the late night work is making sure you've got the financing, you've got, you can make this successful on that side of it. What kinds of challenges or what kinds of things did you have to navigate in terms of, say, having a loan to buy the business or whatever those pieces were? And did you run into anything or interference because you are a Black woman? I mean, you're a woman, you're a Black woman, and did those things play into your ability to get what you needed to be a businesswoman?
Well, I believe that even in my own personal life, I really have no debt. And so when we created this business and our other business, we went in saying that we would have no debt. So we worked hard, we saved. If we really needed something that was outside of our budget, then we fundraised. And we fundraised with things that we thought that people cared about. And so that's how we made it through. So I didn't really experience with loans and things like that, because that wasn't something that we even thought about.
You just didn't have a business plan that relied on that.
Right.
Which probably, like you said, made it work for you, because my guess would be that you might have gotten pushback, and you might have gotten, "Oh no, I'm sorry, we can't give you the loan," or some of those things that other people have found as barriers to starting. I mean, I do remember when we were trying to get a seed for the building, because each year it's getting hotter.
We thought about going to the bank for a loan, and you always have that in the back of your mind. Will we get it? Will we not? We work hard. We've been with the bank for so many years. Our credit score is X, and we just never did that. And so when the pandemic happened, the bank was like, "Oh, do you need a loan? Do you need a loan?" I'm like, "Wait a minute. I used to have money. Now my income is zero, and now you're trying to push the loan." So that just was something that we never.
Well, that's really commendable, because I think probably most business owners can't do it that way, or don't have the resolve to even try to do it that way. So that really,
it takes a lot of discipline.
It absolutely does. Yes. And in terms of, you mentioned Rosalind being a mentor and a good sounding board for you. Any others, people in your life, or in general, or within the early childhood education field, who have influenced you or helped you along or been good for your path?
I would say my director Shirley Lemon. She was the one who had the years of experience. She knew people. I mean, even with community care licensing, you know, she wasn't afraid to reach out. And so it was really nice having her as our forefront person, right? Who had the resources, because again, at the end of the day, it's all about who you know.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so for whatever we needed, whether it was, you know, more funding or help with a problem we were having, she was the one that had all the resources. So she was always the one that, you know, helped us get through it.
That was a good person to have on your side.
Right.
And then maybe in general, the community that you're in, Benicia, have you felt supported in the years that you've been a businesswoman here? And of course, your families love you because they sent their kids here and that's why they want to be here. Have you had any experiences that were good, bad, or otherwise within this community?
I think with us being here 19, you have a combination of both.
Yeah.
You know, you hope that everyone loves you, but the reality is people come with different things and wants and needs. And so the great thing about our families is that the ones that have come have supported us, and then they see what we do in the end, and they believe in our philosophy and what we're believing in, and so they are the ones that reach out and say, hey, we went here. And so we've never advertised. And so I don't advertise. So in the beginning, it was really slow because it was a trust thing, right? And so I think as we had more and more people come and trust us and say, hey, she's a part of our family, because that's what we always say, welcome to the Tender Hearts family. As they begin to do that, then we realize, oh, we have something here, right? So you don't focus on the negative because you're always going to have negatives. You're always going to have naysayers. And so, like we tell the children, and I tell them this all the time, you're going places, you know, and don't let anybody tell you that you aren't, you know. So as long as you feel that you can do it, and as long as you feel eternally that you are special, then the sky's the limit.
That's great. That's a good message for kids to hear. When I was looking at your website, I noticed, and I was reading about your philosophy, about your approach to education and so forth. And it sounds like you really make a concerted effort to have a diverse student population, family population. And tell us a little bit about how you manage to have such a diverse staff, a diverse children and families population. How have you made that happen?
It's intentional. I want the children to be able to see their community, right? Because when I go and I see other places, I don't see people that look like me, right? And so I never really wore braids before the pandemic. So since the pandemic, I've been wearing braids. And it's nice to see the children, they'll come over and touch your hair.
Kids are so into hair, aren't they?
Right. And so, you know, so for them, it's a new experience. But if that's something that they can grow up with, right, then that's something that they can take with them. Like, we don't talk about really race at the school. We talk about being a good person, right? And so I believe at this age, they don't see color. But I think that once we get to the point, even as a society, even for the adults, where you don't see color and you see the person behind, then you can see them as equal. Then you can see them as your friend. Then you can see them as your neighbor. And I just believe, again, that if that is the foundation. So if we can instill that when they're young, then they'll always have it.
Children's hearts are usually pretty open to that. They have empathy. Even 2-year-olds have empathy and know how to express empathy. So I think you're on the right track with that. So finally, with all that we have had going on in our country, in our world, and I'm referring to some of the undercurrent of things in the last 4 years. What do you hope? What do you hope for families and children?
My friends always say that I'm crazy, but I think that the pandemic was a great thing for us. I think it was a wake-up call for a lot of people. A lot of people think we're fine, you know, society's good, and they don't realize that if it's not affecting you, but it's affecting your neighbor, and now everyone is able to see and experience what, you know, people of color and, you know, others have been talking about for years and for decades, right? And I think too that it's, you know, we've gone into the digital age where everything is digital. And so we're like, oh, I have 2,000 Facebook friends. I don't need friends. I don't need people. And what the pandemic has taught us is that what are we craving? Human interaction, right? And so families are important. We're realizing friendships are important. We're realizing that being connected as people face to face are important, right? And so I think that the pandemic was a beautiful thing because we even now have more companies that will never, you know, in the past really allow people that look like me to the table. Now they're saying, hey, we're looking around. Are we really inclusive? You know, can we do better? Does our boardroom reflect, you know, what our community looks like for the people that are buying our products? And so again, I try to make my mark in the children, so, you know, when I am a police officer, when I was a police officer, they wouldn't be people that I would actually...
They wouldn't get to your line of work at that point.
Right. And so I read an article that stated that if you want to save a child, you have to start, it takes you 15 years. And so a lot of times we go into the high school and we're trying to make changes, and we go into, you know, when they're that age. But the reality is, if you do the math, that means that you really need to start when they're little.
That's right. Yeah.
And you need to instill it when they're little. And so that way, when they get older, they can see the difference. Oh, I do remember people that look like me, and they were okay people. Yeah. They weren't the boogie.
Yes.
And so I just think that the pandemic in these last 4 years was great.
Because
if it had not have happened, I don't think we would be here right now talking. Right?
Well, I haven't thought about the pandemic in quite that light, but I agree with you that we've found some humanity we didn't even know we had, because COVID hasn't known color, age, race, ethnicity. It has devastated everybody, or economics, all of those things. It's a level playing field when it comes to something like a disease that we've all been fighting. So that's an interesting lens you put on that, and I agree with you that.
And at the end of the day, it showed us that we are not different.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that we're all the same. Now it's affecting us differently because of the different communities that we live in and the different access that we have available, right? Yeah. And so when we see that when we take that access away, then look how it can affect the people, right? And so, but we're working on a lot of things that we never would have worked on, or that we never would have discussed, right?
Our eyes have been open to many things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought about it in that way, but I kind of like that lens on it.
Right. So I think 2020 was the best year ever because a lot of people are having conversations that they never had. I mean, I even had friends out of the blue call me and say, Tina, I'm sorry. And I'm like, you're sorry for what? What did you do? And they're like, I'm sorry that I didn't know. And you're like, and so you're having these conversations. Well, how did it feel being a police officer?
Right.
How did it feel? You know, because I can see both sides.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, you've got experience on both sides of that whole issue. Yeah.
How does it feel being a business owner? Now, what do you do? But when a business is done, they collectively come together, which is one of our core philosophies here at Tenderhearts, and they are helping each other. We never got help. Right? I would always call the other preschools and say, hey, how are you guys doing? What do you guys need? How about we all have the same price? That way people are basing coming to us based on our program basis how much you charge.
What kind of reaction did you get from that?
They were like, oh, she's crazy. But I'm like, but think about that, right? And I said, when you think about it, that is what, again, I love to read, but I read an article where they had the 3 top cell phone places, and they keep their prices the same. So it's not like
it's really about their product and their service.
You can't get mad at Sprint because you go to the next place, and so their thing was if we keep the price the same, then people are just basing it on the service, and so
interesting way to see it.
That's the next pandemic.
Well, is there anything else you'd like us to know about you, or anything else you want to share with us?
I'm just honored to be here. I'm just honored that we're having these conversations and that we are trying to, as a community, do things together, which is what we never did. We never, I know all my neighbors. right? And I help them, and they're always the ones that come to me if they need things, or and so they're starting to rely on other people. But we've gotten to that point where we don't want to know your neighbors. You can't talk to me. You can't say anything, and we're changing that. We're changing our thought process, and all of that is a good thing.
Well, you give a really good way of looking at it, and I like that. I like the positivity that you're sharing, and I can see where doing that in your business has got to be a great thing.
Yes.
Thank you for sitting down and talking with me today, and I look forward to getting to know you more. I want to hear more about your school and do more with you.
Thank you.
All right.
Look, my
you rocked
family,
it.
my sister came in, my brother.
It's a family affair. Will you share your pictures too?
Yeah.
I need you.